The History of Psychosocial Rehabilitation by Bridget Wadley. There was a de-institutionalization movement that took place during the 60s and 70s for individuals with mental health disorders. It was about less time at institutions and more of having individuals with mental health disorders make their way into the mainstream society. Even today, we are fighting the stigma that people have about this topic. Individuals will use the terms crazy or insane and even refer psychiatric hospitals as the loony bin or the insane asylum. Back then, there were less medications and therapies on how to help someone, so they had a hard time with interventions and would sometimes use restraints and other methods that wouldn't be used today, like they were back then. Back in the 1930s, electroconvulsive shock therapy was used and was seen as a punishment. Today, it is still used as a last resort if no other methods have helped an individual with severe PTSD or severe depression. It is used to prevent one from committing suicide or having more suicidal thoughts or actions. It is known to reverse symptoms of certain mental health disorders, and it can also provide the individuals with a brief, short memory loss period. During the 60s and 70s, there started to be community mental health centers, Social Security income, subsidized housing, Medicaid and independent living for those with mental health disorders, the same disorders found in individuals in the 30s that lived in psychiatric hospitals. The failures of de-institutionalization resulted with community mental health centers being less than ready to deal with long-term mental health disorders. The staff were poorly trained and used more of psychodynamic mental health approaches, regardless of evidence that showed other ways that are more helpful. There were behavior patterns with the clients. The clients showed small amounts of functioning, unusual and inappropriate behaviors, and a huge dependence on staff. In 1773, there was the first hospital for individuals with mental health disorders that opened their doors in Williamsburg, Virginia. In 1840, there were 8 mental health hospitals. Dorothea Dix pushed for more hospitals, 32 to be exact, to move these individuals from jails and almshouses, which were the original homeless shelters, to these locations. In this time period, there was a category for these people that was called insane and idiotic in the U.S. Census. In 1900, the mental health hygiene movement started. In 1946, President Truman signed the National Mental Health Act, which allowed for a big amount of funding for psychiatric education and research, as well as leading the National Institute of Mental Health in 1949. Some medications that were discovered made their way between the time period of 1949 and 1952, including way more today. In 1949, lithium was found and used to treat the lessening of symptoms for people diagnosed for bipolar disorder. In 1952, thorazine was developed and helped reduce symptoms such as hallucinations, delusions, and agitation. In 1956, Congress approved $12 million for research in the psychopharmacology department. In 1965, the Community Mental Health Center Act was enacted and acted upon. Some of the acts created were the Federal Mental Health Systems Act, the Mental Health Planning Act, the Minnesota's Comprehensive Mental Health Act, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, etc. All of these acts were added to and names were changed over the years. The acts provided a safe ground for individuals with mental health disorders. Their names were safe in the systems, and what they were diagnosed with, like HIPAA law, protected them. They found rights that they didn't have in the early 1900s. They found a voice and to be able to stand up for themselves. New therapies and medications, which helped tremendously. Assistance programs, which helped for many different reasons, etc. Ed Roberts is the founding father of independent living. He was disabled at the age of 14 due to polio. He denied being disabled through a time when he had become anorexic. He went back to school, got his high school diploma, and then went to college. He wanted financial aid, however, the California Department of Rehabilitation rejected it the first time because they had decided he was too disabled to work. He fought with them and made public why they had turned him down, and within a week they approved him for financial aid. 15 years afterward, he became head of the California Department of Rehabilitation, the same agency that had once turned him down and written him off. Individuals that applied for a job through the agency were trained, hired, and fired by Ed. In 1970, Ed and some other students with disabilities founded a disabled students program on the Berkeley campus. In 1983, Ed, Judy, and Joan Leon founded the World Institute on Disability, which provided the rights of people with disabilities around the world. In 1964, there was a Civil Rights Act created that prohibited discrimination on race, religion, ethnicity, national origin, and creed. Later, gender was added. There were many acts that followed. Wade Blank devoted his life to the civil rights movements and acts to go in place. In 1974, he founded the Atlantis Community, which urged consumer independent living. In 1978, Wade and Atlantis developed ADAPT, which stands for Accessible Public Transportation, for individuals with disabilities. In 1990, regulations were made that stated there needs to be lifts on buses. Psychosocial rehabilitation was established to be used as treatment for individuals and given by the first workers of the Community for Mental Health Center. The basis of psychology wants individuals to describe, explain, predict, and control human interactions and behavior. The basis of PSR is hoping to do this with techniques that arise. We have all come a long way since the first institution was built, but I feel that we still have a ways to go as far as stigma is concerned. Thank you for watching.